Some people think I'm an alien. Not true. And it's amazing how, even though you can show that something works on paper, and the calculations are very clear, until you actually have the physical object and they can drive it, it doesn't really sink in for people. And so that I think is something worth noting. If you're going to create a company, the first thing you should try to do is create a working prototype. Everything looks great on PowerPoint. you can make anything work on PowerPoint. But if you have an actual demonstration article, even if it's in primitive form, that's much more effective for convincing people.
What we're going to explain to you today is that LiDAR is a fool's errand. And anyone relying on LiDAR is doomed. Doomed. Expensive sensors that are unnecessary. It's like having a whole bunch of expensive appendices. Like one appendix is bad. Well, now they want to put a whole bunch of them. That's ridiculous. You'll see.
Several times that reading. That's the main reason I didn't go to electricity college is because the data rate was too slow. So it's like, why is this? Why are they reading the textbooks? I mean, this is like a bedtime story or something. Ridiculous. My response always when I hear about electrochemical breakthroughs is, please send us a sample cell. That usually, that has always has resulted in nothing happening.
Thank you.
So.
Just talking a bit about what were the thoughts back then? What were some of the comments? Let's see. The internet is forever. But this is a mere taste. It was like I said, electric cars were considered extremely impossible and stupid, and in various forms. You're a fraud. Blah. Like, okay, you can drive that fraud. Okay, and then now things have changed.
And there've been some pretty crazy crashes, I should say, as well. We've had a guy, in fact, things that I wasn't, sure that really it would work out so well. I mean, there's a guy that drove through 2 concrete walls at 110 miles an hour. I always used to say, well, I think the car is really safe unless you drive it off a cliff, and then somebody drove it off a cliff. Fine.
So we started off with the deliveries essentially mid-2012 in the U.S., and then a little over a year later started deliveries in Europe, and then about 8 months after that we started deliveries in China, and now and later this year we'll be starting right-hand drive deliveries for the UK, Japan, Australia, and probably South Africa. Since I'm originally from South Africa, I get a lot of complaints about why the hell the car's not there.
We also have a rule that if somebody's in a meeting and finds that this meeting is not helping them in a meaningful way, and they are not contributing to the meeting, they should just leave.
Just get up and pack.
Just get up and walk out.
All right. And would that be, in your culture, would that be rude to do that? Or?
No, that's expected. That's rude to stay.
So they got to see steel being poured, and then titanium being poured as well, and creating sophisticated castings. They seemed pretty excited about that, and it was kind of like Charlie and the Metal Factory, I guess.
And it holds 1,200 tons of liquid oxygen. So we tested it. So we successfully tested it up to its design pressure, and then went a little further.
To feel like a work of art. Like if you open up the door, it should just be this amazing experience. I mean, this may sound a bit silly, but it should just be like,
Go back to this plant, this massive plant that we have out in Fremont, California.
Today, yeah. I never expected that we'd have this plant.
But it's an amazing place.
Yeah. And the amazing thing is, it's kind of full, which is, when we got in there, we thought, when we first got that plant, it's one of the biggest plants in the world. I think it's sort of, by footprint, I think it's maybe the 3rd or 4th biggest manufacturer.
How many square feet?
It's 5.5 million square feet.
5.5 million.
Yeah.
So that's what, 100 and how many acres?
You mean under roof?
150 acres?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a General Motors building. Just to give you perspective, General Motors building, which is where the Apple Store is, that one block, that's 1 acre. This is 150 acres.
Yeah, it's crazy. You could go camping in there. Like, it takes you a long time to walk from one side to the other. We have bikes in the factory, so you can just get around a bit faster.
The cost of refueling or reloading propellant on Falcon 9 is about $200,000, and the cost of the rocket is $60 million. So it's just like a plane. I mean, it's just, if you were to refuel a plane, not very expensive. If you want to buy a new plane, very expensive. At this point, I'm really reasonably confident that it can be done, and now it's a question of executing to make that design work and seeing if there are any gotchas. And there'll probably be a few craters along the way, so I'm not expecting this to be a smooth journey. As long as the rocket doesn't land on anyone, it'll be fine.
It might be possible to use the Starlink system effectively if you had a repeater, ground-based repeater system. But the Starlink user terminal is about the size of a sort of small to medium-sized pizza. So I'm not sure you'd want to put that on the roof of the, of a Tesla. I mean, maybe, but I think probably just using. Most likely, we'll continue to use just Wi-Fi and the cellular network. Yeah, most likely.
In the future, the probability of the steering wheel being taken away in the future is 100%. Consumers will demand it.
But initially, you would call up.
I'm going to be clear. This is not me prescribing a point of view about the world. This is me predicting what consumers will demand.
Yeah.
Consumers will demand in the future that people are not allowed to drive these 2-ton death machines.
Like wings and landing gear work great on Earth, but they kind of need an atmosphere and a runway. And like, who's going to build that runway? How do you get? Begs the question. Like, somebody's going to build the runway. Also, there's no air on the moon, but tricky to land with wings. So, propulsive landing is the way to go. It's like actually the only way to go, really. You could try to use it if you had a small payload, like try to sort of bounce. Like that was like one of the Mars missions. Like, had like a inflatable kind of like bouncy castle thing. But I don't think that's like gonna sell well. So propulsive landing is the way to go.
The slide may seem a little generic, because like everything's got robust electronics and algorithms at this point, but not threads. I feel like I'm in Transcendence. Actually, I was in Transcendence. In fact, just to characterize it, the fastest tunneling machine in the world right now is 14 times slower than a snail. Okay, so when I say like, yeah, we're going to have like this tunneling machine that can do a mile a week, we're not talking about the sandworms of Dune here. Okay, it's still slow. It's just as fast as a snail. You will be able to escape it. All right. This is our snail. This is Gary the Sixth. Yeah. It turns out snails don't live that long. So this is Gary the Sixth. But this is our goal. We must be faster than a snail.
And then we're making good progress on the Gigafactory in Shanghai. If you've watched the progress online, it gets followed in excruciating detail. I think the number of drones flying over the factory is pretty nutty. We need air traffic control.
What would have happened if the fourth one hadn't worked? We would have failed. Yeah.
But let's talk about one of the failures were spectacular. I would go out to the island, Kwajalein with Elon, and seeing giant exploding rockets is quite an amazing sight. And I was one of the early investors in SpaceX, and I said, you know what? If all I get to do is to see these rockets explode, well worth every dime I put into this company.
There's something to be said about brotherly support. We've kept the initial configurations for Model 3 very simple. This is critical to achieving a rapid production ramp. Big mistake we made with the X, which is primarily my responsibility, way too much complexity right at the beginning. That was very foolish. So, when you think of it, like
going back to the launch of the Model S only had one configuration at startup production. And it had one configuration because that's all we could do. Not because we were really clever. Model X, hubris extraordinaire, we actually added, I mean, it is like a Fabergé Ego cause. I think it's really an amazing product, but it has way too many cool things in it that should have really been rolled in with version 2, version 3. That would have been the sensible way to do it. We got overconfident and created something great that probably will never be made again. Supercharger team does an incredible job building a global network of superchargers that allow you to travel to a massive section of the world, basically anywhere in North America, almost anywhere in Europe, most places in China, not the Gobi Desert yet, but most places. We'll cover the Gobi Desert. We'll get there. And Saskatchewan, I swear to God, there is. I've specifically asked about the Saskatchewan supercharger, and I'm told it is under construction. Absolutely. I've asked about it like twice. I'm told it's going to be completed soon, and then you will actually be able to drive across Canada. Hawaii. Kazakhstan. Actually, we have some great supporters in Kazakhstan. I think we probably we should have. We will build superchargers in Kazakhstan. There you heard it right here.
That's super fucking hard.
There's a video.
So why is that important? Why has this moment been important for you?
So in order to reuse the boost stage, which is about 70% of the cost of the rocket. So
which cost is that? How much is that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of on the order of $30 to $35 million.
Right. So you want to save that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I tell my team, it's like imagine there was a pallet of cash that was plummeting through the atmosphere, and it was going to burn up and smash into tiny pieces. Would you try to save it?
Right.
Probably yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
And at the same time, we also make sure we don't create Skynet. Ironically, the server room at SpaceX jokingly was called Skynet. The fate has a great sense of irony. So we really need to make sure that doesn't come true. But that's, I think, as for technically aware audience, if there's some AI apocalypse, it's going to come from some collection of sort of vast server farms, terrestrially based, not via the space-based communication system. I did think about that.
We're also expanding the scope of what people typically thought of as a battery factory. We're going all the way from the basic raw materials that go into making up a cell, all the way through to the finished battery packs under one roof in this single factory. Historically, it's gone between a lot of different factories.
It's a 3-step process, which we've outlined for you. All of our secrets are right here. Raw material, bunch of stuff happens, out comes a car.